One of the most commonly asked questions about Canadian whiskey is whether it should be called rye whiskey. In Canada, the terms Canadian whiskey and rye whiskey are often used interchangeably, even though not all Canadian whiskeys contain rye as the primary grain. Historically, Canadian distillers added rye to their whiskey mash bills to give the spirit more flavor, especially when corn was the dominant grain used. Over time, Canadian whiskey became synonymous with the term rye whiskey, even though many Canadian whiskeys today contain only a small percentage of rye, or sometimes none at all. In contrast, American rye whiskey must contain at least 51% rye in its mash bill to be labeled as such. Canadian regulations are more flexible, allowing distillers to experiment with different grains and still use the rye designation on the label. Key points. In Canada, the terms rye whiskey and Canadian whiskey are used interchangeably, regardless of the grain composition. Historically, rye was added to whiskey for flavor, but not all modern Canadian whiskeys contain rye as the primary grain. American rye whiskey must contain at least 51% rye, while Canadian whiskey regulations allow for more flexibility in grain selection.